Welcome back. We are live. It is the final segment. Glenn is giving you the old high. This is the new thing. See, I started the show 16 years ago. I established a tradition. We get the players out. And when my time comes to do the show, Glenn's like, dude, we got 2 minutes. 2 minutes is all we have for the hour. 2 minute segment.
I think that's exactly what you need, too, by the way.
All right, so
I think you handle it.
When we started doing this show, Brendon said to me he wanted to do one segment a week with me that would somehow be... You used the word controversy, and I cannot believe, given the kind of career I've had, that you would mention me and controversy in the same sentence.
I said non-football related topic.
This is a non-football related topic.
It doesn't need to be controversial, but just something non-football related.
Non-football related. Okay. So, Friday, I'm in my car in a rainstorm, and my phone goes off, and it's a WNST text that says that Orlando Zeus Brown had passed away. The first thing I'll know is if it came from my company, I know it's true, so I don't even have to, double check knowing. But I didn't know. I literally sometimes get texts from within my own company that break the news to me. I'm blown away by Zeus's death. But on top of this, we've had Mike Flanagan commit suicide 5 weeks ago. And then yesterday I was in St. Louis in the middle of the game, and I was working from the press box because I was the only one out there on Facebook, and I saw R.I.P. Pep. For anybody out there from the curly community, Thomas Pep Perella was a longtime soccer coach, local entrepreneur, one of my first 3 sponsors. He launched my career with Pepperoni's Pizza and Pepper's Cafe. Died of cancer yesterday after a long battle. And, I never get used to death. I never get used to going to viewings and all that kind of stuff. But from a teammate standpoint, and from a guy that was around, especially around your brother, and played on some teams with your brother, Zeus was such a part of the Ravens. He's 40 years old. I don't think any of us can imagine him being gone. I feel that way about Pepe. I feel that way about Flanny. But just from your football perspective, to talk about what that was like, where you found out, because there's a lot of guys still on the team like Ray that have incredible relationships. Not just that, the guys in the building, the Kevin Burns, the Bob Ellers, the Baker Koppelmans, the Wade Harmons, who've been around for a long period of time. It's been a tough week, and I think they're going to honor Zeus on Sunday night. I think that's completely appropriate.
Yeah, and they honored him in St. Louis as well, which I thought was a really commendable thing to do. We started out the game with the moment of silence, and they didn't need to do that, and it wasn't a guy that was on the team currently. He was a former player. So for them to do that, it just showed the amount of respect that they had for him as a player, and the amount of respect that they had for our organization. But more than any player that I've ever seen in any organization, he was always at our facility. He was always around. He was always cheering the guys on, especially the offense. And
he was a Raven.
Yeah, I mean, when it's all said and done, my brother, his career, he's played on 3 or 4 teams. He's a Raven. You know what I'm saying? Zeus, he's a Raven. He's played on other teams, but...
Are you a Raven now, or are you a Bear?
I'm still, kind of figuring it out. I think, this is my 4th year as a Raven. This will be the longest I've played on any team in my career. In even high school, anything, on one team, 4 years. So, being born in Chicago and raised in Chicago until I was 10, the Bears were a big part of my life. But now I think, as everything's starting to end, I think I'm going to become a Raven like my brother, when it's all said and done.
Nice, nice.
And it's one of those things where it's not like I decided for this to happen, but kind of like how the people that become Ravens, it seems like the team grasps them and pulls them in. Like how did Coach Harbaugh never had any head coaching experience? All of a sudden he's a head coach. He was a special teams coordinator. And Cam Cameron had been fired from one job, and he was driving across country, and all of a sudden the Ravens called him, and they're like, we want you to be a Raven, So it's like the team kind of just pulls you and just takes you over. So that's kind of what's happening with me in Baltimore. But back to Zeus, though, he was always around, and I played on 3 different teams.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
I never saw veteran guys around. Like
alumni in other places. Right. It's not like that, right?
They'd come every once in a while, but Zeus was there all the time. Maybe 2 or 3 weeks wouldn't pass by, whether it was training camp or off season or regular season.
He's not the former player that dies that nobody in the clubhouse knows. I got to think that aside from a few of the rookies that may not have realized who the giant was that was showing up on the sidelines, I mean, all of you had multiple interactions with Zeus. He wasn't just another player who lived in the community. He was a guy that was bonded to that building as much as anything else.
You'd just be sitting there in the training room, right? Practice wouldn't even be starting yet or nothing would be going on. You'd be in the training room, and all of a sudden this big mountain of a man would come up and talk to you, and you start talking to him, you know, like, oh, this is a former player, who exactly? And then, you know, he'd walk away and you'd be like, oh, who is that guy? Who is he? So everybody, you know, he was always around and he had access to everybody and everything, and you know, he touched everybody. It didn't matter who you were or what you were doing. You just be in the training room, oh, what's wrong with you, man? Like, you know, he'd bond with you, and by the end of the, you know, by the end of the day, you know exactly who he was, and you'd be like, man, that's a cool guy right there. So he touched everybody, man. It's a sad thing. We lost a great person.
You know, I think it's interesting to sit here and talk about it, because I texted you earlier today. I said we're going to talk about death, suicide, and legacy. Now, we talked a little bit about the death, and I'm going to get into the Mike Flanagan thing before it's all over with. I will write something about it. People are beating me up about it. I'm not going to talk about it right now because I don't have any definitive thing I want to say at this point. When it's ready, when the cake's ready, it'll be cooked. But in the case of legacy, when I talk about Mike Flanagan, when I talk about Pep Perella, who touched my life and my soul, and you know, my company, and so many people, I promise you right now, just saying the words Pep Perella, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people that will hear this tape that came into contact with, because he was really a Baltimore guy. Zeus became a Baltimore guy, and I think for us to sit and talk about somebody's legacy, it always makes you wonder, if I die tonight on York Road, what are people going to say? What will be written, what will be said, who will say it, who will care, who will know, who will cry? And I think in Zeus's case, and I think in Flanagan's case, these people that are taken away from us too early, these things get said or they get left unsaid that you want to say to those people. And it always makes me think, when's the last time I saw him? Last time I saw Zeus was in his gigantic monster truck down in front of his house at Harborview. I was walking out the Tiki Barge and I saw him and I waved to him. And with Zeus, it wasn't like I had to go over and say hello or hang out. Zeus used to come out and do this Monday show all the time. I got pictures with him. I found all these pictures of him and Ogden when Ogden was a puppy back in '96. And with Zeus, it was just like, hey, Zeus, hey, Ness. And that was it. It wasn't like I was never going to see him again. You know what I mean? It's like there were conversations we had on mic, off mic, whatever, about kids and how much his family meant and stuff like that. I can't imagine what that clubhouse must have been like on Friday for so many of you who knew him a little bit.
Yeah, I think, you know, when we broke our huddle, we just ended it with the dominate, because that's what he did against all his opponents. He just went in there and he just dominated the man in front of him. And so we had one of the players that played with him, I think it was Double J, and just, you know, in his memory and in his spirit, it's like, let's go out there and dominate. And I think you saw that come out against the Rams, because it was such a touching week for us, you know. So, and for us to be talking about him today and to be talking about Flanny today, you know, that says a lot about them. One thing we always talk about with the Ravens is these moments will never be again. So when you're in the moment, like we're sitting here right now, we're going to do it next week, but, you know, next week's going to be another topic, another issue.
Sure.
Nothing's ever going to be the same. So just when you're in the moment, just, you know, sit there and just visualize and just take it all in, because you don't know when it's ever going to happen again. And playing football is one of those things where, you know, a few people die every year, whether it's high school or college, whether, you know, someone's paralyzed or some kind of crazy accident where someone passes away. So it's like play every play like it's your last play. So we went out there, we broke the huddle in you know, the memory of Zeus, and they're dominate, you know, just dominate every play. Every second you have another play is a blessing. So let's go out there in his name and his spirit, and let's dominate the person in front of us.
Yeah, man. So, I mean, let's be in the moment of 2-1 here, and we'll lift the glass for Zeus today. And you know, he was always a good friend to the show and a good friend to Baltimore Ravens fans. I think everywhere he was.
We lost a special person.
Yeah,
so
I don't think there's any doubt about
we'll
it.
pay a tribute to him, and hopefully we'll bring him home a win too on a Sunday night.
And I'll try to get something controversial for us to talk about on this segment next week.
It doesn't need to be controversial, just a little something non-football related, just to keep us in touch, because, you know, we're in our bubble, football bubble. You know, that's not the real world, you know. So it's like, you know, every day, you know, people are out there struggling and trying to survive and doing all these different things. When we play football, it brings a smile to people's faces, you know. So
brings people together.
Right, and so we're lucky to be able to do that. But, you know, that's not necessarily the real world. It's its own little microcosm, you know, being a football player and being able to do those things. But, you know, on the outside, you know, there's people passing away. There's people that are homeless. There's people that are hungry. So there's a lot of things going on. So it's just one of those things. People think of us just as football players, but we're so much more than that. We didn't ever just play football just to win or lose the game. We do it for so many reasons, more than just, you know, to go out there and win. At the end of the day, it's the most important stat, you know, it's the most important thing, but there's so many things out there that outweigh winning versus losing and being able to touch people and help people. So that's why I always like to talk about something a little bit different outside of football.
Cool. Well, we just did that. It's Brendon Ayanbadejo. Give it up for him. Mount Cody, Luke, Glenn, Pete, John, Tom, Ryan, Drew was here, Ethan was here, my wife was here, My wife is the most important one because she's our videographer tonight.
You're nothing without her.
I am nothing without her. All right, go beat the Jets next week, all right?
Let's go.
All right, we're signing off from High Talk. Thanks, everybody, for having us out tonight.